Okay, we're here at the Mackinac Policy Conference in the dining room of the Grand Hotel, and we have Saunteel Jenkins with us, former president of the Detroit City Council, former CEO of THAW, and now mayoral candidate. Welcome to the island.
Thank you for having me this morning.
Other than the debate, what are you looking forward to this week?
So that's the thing I'm looking forward to the most,
Yes,
honestly,
I'm sure
is
you're
the debate.
paying a lot of attention to that, right?
Yes, but it's always good to catch people on the porch, right, and have some conversations, especially as a candidate, right? But I'm looking forward to some of the conversations about housing, the conversations about education, both of which are really important to Detroit.
Let's start with this. We are a couple months into the campaign. We're still a couple months away from the primary in August. Give us your assessment of the race at this point and some of the distinctions that you think are becoming clear among the candidates and which issues you think are going to kind of define who ends up in August getting those top two spots.
So, according to voters, the biggest issue right now for the next mayor is improving the neighborhoods. The distinction is we have a lot of candidates. We do not have a lot of candidates who have the executive leadership needed to manage and turn things around on the ground in the way that voters want to see it. And I would say I'm the only candidate that has that executive leadership as well as the legislative leadership and understanding of what's needed on both sides in order for us to make it happen.
I'm not surprised to hear you say that neighborhoods are the top issue. That's kind of what we were talking about before you came over today too. Can you identify, a handful maybe of specific issues in the neighborhoods, quality of life issues that you would address if you became mayor? Like, tell us what are those things that need to happen when we talk about improving life in the neighborhoods?
Absolutely. It's safety. First of all, people still don't feel safe, and no matter what neighborhood you're in, people don't feel safe. So we have to address the issue of safety and the perception of safety. We have to address the housing issue.
Well, maybe let's hang on safety for a second. So what specifically would you do to make neighborhoods safer? Let's talk about that.
So first of all, community policing has to be a philosophy, right? It can't just be, there are a couple of officers in each precinct that are focused on community. It should be a philosophy throughout the department. Our police officers should be working with businesses and community leaders in good times and bad, so that when they show up, we know who they are, they know who we are, there's more trust on both sides. So that's the first thing. The second thing is it's really important as we talk about making neighborhoods safer, we don't buy into the notion that you can only do that by over-policing a community. The most effective crime reduction strategy is prevention. So we have to invest more in programs that get people viable jobs and viable opportunities. We have to invest more in after-school programs and safe spaces and places for our kids during the most dangerous hours, which are 3 p.m. and 8 p.m. For every dollar we spend on prevention, we're spending $5 to $7 on Wayne County juvenile system and Wayne County jail. So we have to flip that equation.
Detroiters, when they think of safety, I think have kind of a dichotomy of issues. One is people want safe neighborhoods, which means they want the police to respond to things that happen. But they also are really wary of the history of policing in the city, the tension that sometimes exists between the community and the police. How would you manage that issue? Talk about the current chief and the job that he's doing. Is that someone you would retain?
I think the current chief is doing a really good job, and that's why when I say community policing, it's not an assignment. It really is a philosophy. All the time, all officers throughout the department, right? And it's addressing specific crimes differently. If you have a theft ring, then that's not community policing, right? That's some kind of special unit or task force that is focused on finding, arresting, and making sure that those criminals get convicted. but the presence of police in a positive way is a deterrent. So that's why when I talk about them showing up in good times and bad, it's important that they're going into the coffee shop on the block, that they're going into the gas station and the grocery store, because residents see it, but criminals see it too. So, and the other piece of it is mental health and not criminalizing and over-criminalizing mental health. I think Chief White did a great job getting that started, and I think Chief Bettison is doing a really great job continuing down that same pathway, but we have a lot of work still to do.
Do we have the resources? Because what it sounds like you're saying partially is that the police don't have the presence in neighborhoods to prevent things like people speeding through enforcing kind of some basic, issues in neighborhoods. But I'm wondering, we talk a lot about the number of officers that are located downtown, and people feel like that makes it more difficult for officers to respond. I'm thinking about the shooting that happened on the northeast side last summer, right? There were complaints from residents that officers didn't show up as fast as they would have liked. So we also have been trying to get fully staffed with our police force over the last few years. I think we're pretty much there now. Do you think it's an issue of resources? Is it an issue of deployment that we don't have officers in the neighborhoods to address these issues? How would you address that?
Yeah, first, it's a great thing that we are, for the first time in a really long time, fully staffed in the police department, right? Part of that is paying our officers a competitive wage. So now that we have those vacant positions filled, we have to look at how we redeploy our officers so that there is a greater presence. A greater presence in the neighborhoods, and that residents feel safer. But it's not just resources in terms of officers, it's resources in terms of strategy. And also when we talk about issues like mental health, it's what other resources should we have at the table. Social workers, mental health professionals who are answering calls along with our officers, so that you have trained professionals addressing someone who is having a manic episode versus someone who's trained to address someone who's having a criminal episode.
You were going to talk about housing too as a neighborhood issue. What would you do? I mean, affordable housing, of course, is not plentiful enough in Detroit. It's as much an issue of quality, though, I think, as it is of quantity, right? There are lots of places you can rent or live for very cheap in Detroit, but you wouldn't want your family staying in those places. So how do you address both of those issues, the cost and the quality?
So we need quality, affordable housing at every income level, whether you rent or own, right? And I say at every income level because when we talk about affordable housing, we generally think about struggling families, like families that I was serving for over a decade at THAW. But there are people who are working every day who can't find decent, affordable housing in the city of Detroit. And then they end up going to the outer ring suburbs because you cannot find what you're looking for here. So we need to address it at every level. And one of the things that I would create as part of my strategy, first, I've talked many times about the strategic master plan for our neighborhoods.
Yeah.
That strategic master plan has to include a housing plan, right? And where we are concentrating our housing should be in partnership with schools. Right? We should be creating density in neighborhoods where there are schools that will attract families. And we should be working with the schools to make sure that they're getting stronger and stronger so that people want to send more kids to our schools. But the other piece is finding ways to make building affordable housing more feasible for developers. And we can do that through bond programs. That's what cities like San Francisco, New York, Chicago have done to ensure that there's more affordable housing in the market. You utilize the city's credit.
The city's credit, right.
Yeah, can you explain that a little bit more for folks who probably, like me, who don't understand that? How would we use bonds to get more affordable housing?
So you can do it in a few different ways, right? You can use bonds to actually provide financing to reduce upfront costs for development. You can use bonds just as collateral for developers to get lower cost or low cost loans, we can offer low, no cost loans. You can use bonds to offer first time home buyer programs. You can do things like in Philly, they have programs where they're helping landlords. Because when we talk about the number of quality, affordable homes in the market, one of the issues is that people who own these homes can't afford to fix them up. Even though they're renting them out, over half of the folks in Detroit who are landlords own one or two homes, right?
The mom and pop landlords, they call them.
Mom and pop landlords, and many of them own it because grandma died and she left this house, right? So they are not. We have this false perception that landlords are these corporate entities and they're just not putting money into it. They're struggling too. Many of our landlords are struggling too. So creating home repair programs to help them provide high quality housing, and in exchange for our help, they will guarantee to maintain our rent levels at a certain amount for a number of years. We don't want to fix your house up and then you increase the rent.
Interesting. So in exchange, they would keep their rent basically flat or incrementally, but not a large increase year over year.
Absolutely. And then the other piece of that, which is important for me coming from THAW, is ensuring that these homes are energy efficient. Because if your rent is $500 and your gas bill is $600,
Yeah.
that's not really affordable.
I'm in a 100-year-old house and I'm just paying money to see the heat go out the windows. So I know what that's
you
like.
understand, right? It's like you can literally see it, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And you've talked about finding ways to give land bank homes to teachers as a way to incentivize teachers to come into the city, kind of going at education and the housing issue. I wanted to ask you about the land bank. Like, what is the future? I heard you say at a forum recently that you wouldn't have supported even creating the land bank in the first place. So maybe we'll start there. Is that?
So I did not support turning over all the city properties to the land bank.
Okay.
They were already in place, right? But they had hundreds of homes, not thousands of homes, right? And when they first brought the proposal to city council, what I said was they haven't figured out how to properly manage what's in their inventory. Why would we give them more? Land bank, get it together, show us what you can do, and then come back and ask us to give you all city properties. That's not what happened. So I can't say that I would have never handed everything over. The concept of the land bank and what they are supposed to be able to do is not a bad concept in itself. It's just about how it's managed and executed.
So what does the future of that entity look like under a Jenkins administration?
Well, they just released a 5-year strategic plan, and I just started reading it. So until I understand what that is fully, I won't speak on what it looks like.
Yeah.
I will tell you that I can tell you some really basic things. What it has to look like is that it makes it easier for residents to access properties, side lots, homes on their block. It looks like we're not harassing nonprofits who are doing good work in the community and forcing them to deed properties back to the land bank if they're taking a little longer. So it does not look like certain people are being treated differently than other people. And it's a more efficient process, and we have to be creative, like the idea of offering homes to teachers to attract them here to teach in our schools and live in the city, in the neighborhood.
Have you seen or done any polling about the current race?
I have seen, and yes, have done.
All right. So what does it tell you?
What it tells me is that there is a statistical tie with myself. I'm sorry, let me go back. That what it says is that there is a leader. Every poll names the same leader.
City Council President Mary Sheffield seems to have a lead on everybody else.
And she should. She's the council president. She's been running the longest. And then the tie for second place is myself, Kinlock, and Claire.
Okay.
However, of the three, I have the highest favorability. And when voters hear my message, my qualifications, my story, I come out ahead of them.
And you feel like that executive leadership experience is the distinction there?
I think there are a couple of things.
Yeah.
The executive leadership experience is the distinction. I believe the work that I've done for years in this community makes a difference as well. I think that voters trust me, and I think that my life story is one that so many Detroiters can relate to in different ways, right? There are different pieces of my life story that Detroiters relate to and say, okay, she's been through what I've been through.
She's like me.
Yeah.
What is the value of having that data this week at the policy conference when you're able to go to folks and say, look, this race is not over. It's actually very competitive. You should give me a real serious look. Is that helpful for you as you're making your case to folks at the conference? And help me understand a little bit more too, like what's really at stake this week for the candidates being up here on the island? What do you hope to get out of that?
It's very helpful, right? And I think the case being made on the island is a little bit different than the case being made at home. Yes, here that executive experience makes a huge difference, right? Because you're talking to other executives who understand the difference between, governance and management. So, yes, that's part of the conversation. Absolutely, the conversation about the fact that I have the highest favorability. And again, when voters hear my story, they connect with me. Everybody knows somebody who has survived or who they've lost from cancer. Unfortunately, we all know somebody who has lost their lives to gun violence, right? All of these things are part of my story. So voters connect with that. And on the island, people connect with the fact that I've been able to turn an organization around, that I know what it means to manage a budget as well as pass a budget. That matters.
I wanted to ask you about the business community as well. What I've been hearing is a lot of sitting on the sidelines, kind of waiting to see how things shake out. I don't know if that means they're waiting for the primary to be over or for things to develop more. How have you been doing in your interactions with business leaders in the city, assuring them that under your administration they'd be able to flourish, and obviously new small businesses are important as well, but I think we're talking kind of more about some of the more established, bigger players in town.
So my message to anybody who's saying, I'm going to wait it out, is you can't wait it out. And hope that good candidates get through the primary. Anybody who has a stake in this should be on the front lines ensuring that the two best candidates make it through this primary. Not most popular, not been in it the longest, not any of those superficial things, right? People who can make a difference should be making a difference to ensure the most qualified candidates are who voters are choosing from in November. Because if we're like, neither is great, but I'm going to pick the one that's the least not great. That's not good for anybody.
Last question. We have this big debate Thursday night. It is really the first kind of formal, structured debate that we'll have the candidates, and talk about your prep for that and what Detroiters should expect to hear from you that to separate you during that debate. I think people don't quite understand how difficult that can be, the kind of pressure of the structure, the limited time you have to actually say what's on your mind. What are you doing to get ready?
Learning how to speak quicker.
That's right.
Right?
This probably hasn't been great practice as we've been.
Right. This is the opposite.
That's right. It is the opposite. And as someone who, I just speak slowly anyway, we all know that, but also I tend to be more thoughtful, and I want to explain the why behind the what. You can't do that in a debate, right? It's talking points. It's talking points. So that's what I've been boiling all of this policy in my head down to talking points. That's been my preparation. I'm really excited. I think it'll be the first structured debate, and I'm looking forward to the structure where there's an even playing field for each of the candidates, and I think I'll do very well.
All right. Well,
Thank you so much for the time.
Great to see you here, and we'll see you at the debate.
I look forward to it. Thank you. And there is a debate watch party at McGee's at Thomas McGee's.
I saw it.
in
Eastern Market.
Eastern Market. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. So
There we go.
yeah. If you're in Detroit,
If you're listening, get over there, right?
yes, that's right. Yes. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks. Yeah, I saw all the signs for you out
I didn't
on
know